Hello! Today we are working on the gear assembly of the Rokr Lift Coaster kit. The main structure uses a special gear assembly to raise and lower the elevator built in the last video. For brevity, we will leave out some steps such as waxing and placing smaller pieces. Begin with the support structure, an oval connecting piece and an A-frame piece. Put 4 poles into the connecting piece. Then place the connecting piece on top of the A-frame. Lakenate interrupts for some attention. For hogging the workbench for too long, he is banished from the workroom. Continuing, after aligning the holes, gently push or hammer the poles into place. It takes a while. Once they are in place, cut off the extra length. You should realize by now that the number of poles provided is less than the number required for the complete assembly. You will have to recycle poles used in previous steps, sand the ends to round and smooth them. Repeat the previous steps using the connecting piece and a tower piece. The tower will be important later. Make sure the connection piece is on top of the tower and the tower has the correct side up. Hammering gently may be required. Cut the excess pieces off. Next, put together the first gear axle. Then place the appropriate gear on the axle and push to the other end. Check to see that the piece spins smoothly. Put a short A-shaped piece on the axle. Add a ring to the axle and push it in. The small A-frame will tend to rotate. Just move it back. Now add 2 more gears with a spacer between them to the axle. Make sure the gear still turns freely. Next, build a smaller axle and put in the hole above and to the side of the first axle. Add 3 spacers and a small gear. Make sure the gear meshes with the outermost gear of the larger axle and everything rotates easily. Set aside the construction for a bit and work on the outer A-frame. Find 2 mostly circular pieces and attach them to the A-frame with poles. Only 3 this time. Again, cut off the excess. Now attach the new A-frame to the rest of the structure. Use the 2 axles for alignment. Finally, use the connectors on the side and bottom to lock the structure together. Check the gear train again. Set aside the A-frame assembly to begin work on the main gear. Start with a short metal rod and add 2 orange pieces to the center of the rod. Use the helper piece to position them. Place the rod into an end hole of the first I-shaped piece. On the other side, add a plastic insert and then another orange piece over that. Push the orange piece until it is snug against the other parts. Now, insert the other side of the rod into the 3-sided piece. On the opposite side, add another plastic insert and an orange piece and press them snug. Finally, remove the 2 plastic inserts. The 2 pieces should now rotate freely around the rod. Repeat the same procedure with another rod, the 3-headed piece and another I-shaped piece, this time with only 1 orange piece on the metal rod. The result should be shaped like an M, with all the parts rotating freely around the two rods. Now, add a longer piece to the remaining side of the three-sided piece. Make sure to line up the correct holes. Again, center a single orange piece on the rod and use plastic inserts and orange pieces on each end. Once everything is snug, remove the two inserts. Add 2 more eyepieces to the remaining hole on the long piece. Be careful that you have the right piece on each side. Oops! Wrong orientation. Once the plastic inserts have been removed, you will have a jumble of connected pieces all flopping around. However, you can start to see how they go together. Next, put together the main gear piece. Add 3 discs to the edge of the gear using wooden poles. The poles go in the 2 outer holes, not the center. After the poles are in, cut off the excess. Add a metal pole with an orange piece on the end through the center hole of the 3 pieces you just added to the gear. Then add the gear to the linked pieces, connecting 2 of the eyepieces. Use an orange piece at the end to lock everything together. The gear should move smoothly around the offset axis. Next, add the main gear to the A-frame assembly. The gear should mesh with the smaller central gear. Now create another axle and put it through the left hole on the A-frame and through the center of the main gear. Bad camera angle. Test that the gear moves freely. Add a ring to the end of the axle to lock the gear in place. The next step creates the final main gear assembly. Find a long rod and put an orange piece on the end. Add a plastic insert and then a larger circular piece and push it to the end of the rod. For the next few steps, it's a good idea to lay the pieces out in the order they will be used. Insert the rod into the small hole at the top of the A-frame. Then add 6 small pieces to the rod. Then the 3-headed piece. Another disc, one of the eyepieces, and then the final small piece. The rod should then go through the small hole in the A-frame. Add a large disc and an orange disc to finish. Now you should be able to turn the gears and the long end piece should go up and down in a regular motion. For the crank, find a black plastic tube and a screw and put the screw in the tube. The wood handle should be sandwiched between 2 nuts so that it is locked in place. Add 2 standoff pieces to the long axle, then the crank, and finally an end piece. Next, a ratchet is placed on the back of the A-frame, sticking into one of the gears. This piece allows the gears to rotate in one direction, but stops them from rotating in the other. The final phase of this assembly is to create the 3 gears that make up the tower section. The first gear is made of 3 parts held together with wood poles. Check the alignment, then add the poles. Some hammering is needed again. Clip off the excess. The second gear is much smaller and made from a single piece. Place a circular piece on one side and a semi-triangular piece on the other and put a metal rod through the center. Add an orange piece on each end of the rod. The last gear is made up of two pieces using the wood poles again. Ed pushed the poles in a little too far, so he clipped the excess from both sides. Add two semi-oval pieces on either side of the gear and insert a metal rod through the center. Add an orange piece to each end and center. Lakenaith pokes his head in to see what's happening. In addition to the gears, you will need a second tower piece to lock the gears in place. To start, place an orange piece on the end of a longer metal rod and insert it into the small hole. Sorry, Lakenaith needs to be banished again. Now, insert the rod into the small hole at the top of the tower piece. Add a standoff piece on the other side. Then insert the largest gear, followed by another standoff piece. Add the smallest gear below the large gear. Make sure they mesh. Finally, add the last gear to the tower. It has to mesh with the gear above it and to the side. Now add the other tower piece. Ed found that it was easiest to lie the assembly on its side to align the gears. Once the tower is assembled, add an orange piece to the rod at the top of the tower. You can now test that the gears all work by turning the crank. Be very careful. The tower is only held together by the top rod until it is put on the base. To begin adding the A-frame, place the long piece from the gear into the slot of the elevator tower and insert the metal rod at the top of the elevator car into the slot on the long gear piece. Next, place the A-frame assembly into its final position on the base and start pushing it into the base. Ed found that it worked best to go around the edges of the A-frame and push in a little at a time until it was fully locked into the base. Finally, try the gears again and make sure everything moves properly. There seems to be a problem with the tower gears, but it is easily fixed. Glory in the wonder of a clever set of gears to lift marbles into the air. Next time we will assemble the ramps that will make an actual marble drop. See you then!